So wait, why don't we do this real quick? That way we can get to the bottom of it. Just do a quick round of introductions if you're, whoever you're from. And so I'll just go first, and then how do we want to do this? Why don't I just call on people? We'll get through this really quickly. Sound good? Great. Matt Holmes, Little Manila Rising, CSC, I love trees. And the person I see next to me is Miss Stephanie Ng from the Air District.
Yeah, that's exactly it. My name is Stephanie Ng. I'm an air quality specialist at the Air District.
And then I see Mark with ASL. You want to say hi, Mark?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Medina. Pronouns are they, them. I'm an interpreter with NorCal Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing.
Thank you, Mark. Always good to have you here. Let's see. Next, I see Mr. Anthony Presto.
Anthony Presto, Outreach and Communications, San Joaquin Valley Air District.
Thank you. And next, I see Miss Jessica Olson.
Hi, Jessica Olson, a Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the Air District.
And next, I see a Richard Blackstone.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
Oh, good. I'm with Peace and Justice. I'm also a horticulturalist and I grow shade trees.
Hot dog. We're going to need a lot of shade. Next, I see Mr. Ned Leba.
Ned Leba, if you can hear me, I'm a resident and I certainly support trees and urban greening in the Stockton AV 617 area.
Hot dog. Thanks for coming, Ned. Next, I see Mr. Scott Wall.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Wall with the California Air Resources Board, and I am the Community Air Protection Liaison to the community of Stockton.
Thanks for being here. Next, I see Jeff Gamboni.
Hello, I'm Jeff, and I'm a landscape architect. I was born in Stockton, and I'm had a practice here for about 30 years, and we've liked to plant trees. We work with different groups. We work with Puentes to plant number of trees at our schools, Stockton Unified School District in particular, and at the Port of Stockton. And we work with the Sue Christie to plant within our parks as well.
Nice segue. Sue's next on my screen. Go ahead, Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Christie with the City of Stockton's Parks Maintenance Division. I advocate as much as I can for trees.
We thank you for that. Next, I see Mr. Grant Kirkpatrick.
Good afternoon, Grant Kirkpatrick. I'm a program manager in the city manager's office. I focus primarily on sustainability, and you might know me from the Transformative Climate Communities implementation grant.
Are you allowed to do anything else?
No, contractually.
Okay. Next, I see Heather Hanks. Did I say that right, Hanks?
It's Hanks. You were close. That's okay. If I was a Hanks, then maybe I would share some of the fortune with the actor person. I'm Heather Hanks. I do outreach and communications with the Valley Air District. I also work on the community strategies and incentives team as well. Wait, did I say? Yes, thumbs up. Perfect.
Perfect. Next, I see Aaron Tarango.
Aaron Tarango with the Valley Air District. I'm a manager over in the Grants and Incentives Department.
Thanks. Next, I see Mr. Doug Vigil.
Hello, everyone. I'm a resident in Stockton. I love trees. I love to be part of this community, and go Matt.
Yeah, go Gadget. Next, I see Nick Muller from GVCC.
Hi, Nick Muller, Director of Greater Valley Conservation Corps. Nice to meet everybody.
Yep, thanks for being here. And I see Taylor from the CSC.
Hey, all, Taylor Williams, resident on the CSC in Stockton.
And next, I see Jonathan Pruitt.
Thank you, Matt. John Pruitt, EJ Program Coordinator, part of the CSC. I am pretty much the conduit to get everyone to the table. Thank you, Matt, for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for rounding people up, and compliments on the clean shave. Next, I'll go to Miss Mary Elizabeth. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Mary Elizabeth, resident on the CSC committee and a fourth generation Stocktonian, coming from South Stockton.
Oh man. Next, I see Miss Amy Ramos, purveyor of fine hats and clear agendas. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, hi everyone. My internet is acting up.
That's okay. I'll introduce you if you want to mute. Amy helps with facilitation in the broader AB 617 process and is here to do a little monitoring tonight. And let's see, the next person I see is Mr. Leonard Seawood.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leonard Seawood. I'm a resident and a CSC member, and I'm just interested in anything that's going to make Stockton better. I believe in trees. I know we need them. It can just help in so many different ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, they show up for work every day. Let's see, the next person I see is SUSD Board Trustee, Ms. Maria Mendez. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Maria Mendez. I actually represent the Box Truck Community Center on the Stockton Unified School District in Washington Elementary School. And I'm glad to see Mr. Galboni because we work together putting some trees up on some of the elementary schools that we have at our sites. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here to be supportive as much as I can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Next, I see Cynthia Pinto Cabrera.
Thanks, Matt. Afternoon, everybody. Cynthia Pinto Cabrera, Policy Assistant with Central Valley Air Quality Coalition. Great to see everybody.
And finally, we have a phone number, 760 number. Does anybody want to come off mute and ID themselves, please? That's okay. We'll move it. We got no secrets here. Listen in.
That was Amy, it seems like, with her voice.
Oh, got you. Oh, I see the chat now. Cool. Well, look, so part of this, we're like the guinea pigs for how to coordinate and keep traction on a subcommittee. Because the big idea here is we're the folks that are going to dive into the vegetative barrier and urban greening measures. And we're going to make sure that that $2 million goes as far as it's supposed to in the study area. But ultimately, this group will just be making a recommendation to the broader CSC during the monthly meetings. And so the idea here is to come up with a clean sort of agenda setting process, identify CSC members who will bring what's hopefully broader input than just CSC opinion. So like Jeff's been planting trees and is an architect and can certainly help us sort those things out. But obviously Jeff can't vote on how we allocate this budget in the CSC. And so I've been a part of one of these processes before, and we kind of pirated their agenda template. And so I've just dropped that in the chat here with you, and happy to convert. Actually, let's make sure everybody has editing or commenting authority on that. And the idea is that every time the subcommittee meets, we can just copy and paste the template and keep a running track of our dialogue. We'll keep notes in this document. So why don't I, unless anybody has any questions before we proceed, I'll just share my screen and walk you through a recommended agenda, and then anybody can feel free to modify, adjust, and grow the agenda. Sound good? Cool. Okay, Jonathan, I will correct that. Real quick, let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen. And so this was, hopefully people can see this now. And this was really the outcome of our last CSC meetings, where we talked about how we can make these subcommittees make a lot of sense. And so up here in the header, we'll just have the static name of the committee, hopefully a static link. Jessica, do we have any concerns about being able to use this link for future meetings?
I don't think so. We'll do one final check, but our concept is that we would post these in those cards, and maybe I can show that too when you guys get a second. And we would call this like a CSC owned, because we're not the ones owning the document. But I think other than that, so far we're good to share this.
Awesome, great. And if that changes, we'll just email everybody. But one of the main things is to figure out why we're here. And so at the top of the subcommittee agenda, we have objectives. And so this first objective is to identify co-leadership, 1, 2, or 3 people that, plan to be at all of these trees meetings, who can help, verbalize the outcomes from these meetings to the general CSC meetings at the beginning of each month, so that folks over there can know what we've been talking about and make the right kind of decisions based on the extra input we're going to gather. next thing, we're doing it right now. We're reviewing the agenda elements and, setting expectations for facilitation. This was a question. I think Harder is not going to facilitate these meetings, but that they may be in attendance often to help Air District staff stay on top of it. So this really is a subcommittee led process. And I will correct that right now. Subcommittee members facilitate. And I'll spell it right. So then the next thing was just to make sure everybody knows why you're here, right? There's a huge SERP to chew on, but we have 2 specific measures under the trees committee. Does anybody want to correct my understanding of that? Great. So we've outlined the 2 SERP committees related to trees. We have vegetative barrier 1, which you can find on page 63 and 65 at this blue SERP link. That's a static link on the Air District's webpage. And then there's also the urban greening and forestry measure, which is on page 66 through 69. This is our authorizing measure. What we have to implement is in spirit with these 2 measures. And there's $1 million in each of these measures. And so that's something that we get to be creative about. As I was excited to see so many city staff here because we can't do this without the city. These are strategies that take place in property that the Air District doesn't own, and neither do CSC members. So these urban greening strategies are going to happen in the city's right of way, and vegetative strategies will also hopefully happen in Caltrans right of way and anybody else's right of way, including local rail and whatnot. So identifying those partner agencies is going to be a key first step, I think, for this committee. Y'all know more people than, we have a collective experience and a collective network here. And so the idea is that everybody that comes to these meetings will be an ambassador for these urban greening and vegetative strategies and find us the partners that we need. There may be instances where, homes and businesses are in valuable corridors for a vegetative strategy. And, we can talk about planting trees in those places. Hopefully all of you will contribute your networks and your insights to this process. Let's see. Oh, an outreach asset map. I was working on a spreadsheet where we could keep track of these outreach assets. Like, for example, Jonathan and I, or Catholic Charities in Little Manila, are part of the Transformative Climate Communities Grant. And there's a coalition of organizations that are doing outreach around an urban greening project. That's an outreach asset. We can share information with them and expand or echo our message further out into the community. And then the nuts and bolts. When do we think we can meet regularly? And let's take some brave stabs at when we can think we can finalize some of these deliverables so that we can go back to the general community steering committee and make sure that we're on the right track and check for understanding with the rest of the committee so that we can continue to implement a work plan. And there's sort of my layman's use of the word work plan, which is different than the Air District's work plan for vegetation. They have to get our strategy approved. It has to prove that it is going to reduce exposure and emissions to be a valid work plan for the SERP. And fortunately, the Air District has some experience with that in Fresno. And so those are the goals, but I want to stop right there to see if there's any goals that folks want to add or have questions. And I see Doug's got his hand up.
Thanks, Matt. The question, clarification, when we go through the process of agreeing about among the subcommittee, this we can go forward to for AB for the last vote to approve this item.
Yeah, I think so. I think the question is which committee, which meeting. I don't, we won't be ready by November, right? Or even December. But the idea is for us to work with Air District staff to come up with a work plan that the broader CSC will approve.
You were asking about the CSC, Doug, or the Air District approval?
I'm talking about the subcommittee. Is the
Yeah.
subcommittee approve that management, or is it gonna be the AB, or the AB, or you, where you work at, is gonna be approving this model, approval of what for from the subcommittee? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, so I think Matt nailed it, is that this group comes up with the recommendation, and then we use the standing update space during the next CSC meeting, or whatever CSC meeting. To Matt's point, maybe it's December, depending on when we have an action item from this group. Yep, and that's kind of the actually what's in the charter. So it's in the charter that's the method. We would never make just one decision in a silo here and not communicate it back to the broader team.
Yeah, I think I also confused it when I was, we can have all the great ideas that we want. The Air District still has statutory criteria that it has to meet to be in compliance with the SERP. So
Right.
that's why
Okay.
it's important that they're here.
Okay, then Matt, what about, is there a tree that we're gonna have to go by different in throughout the city? Because I know there's like trees that during the summertime, it releases a lot of sap, they go to the ground, they go on cars.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the whole species selection thing will be a really interesting process. And I think that's why we have experts here on urban forestry. Yeah, we'll pick the right trees. I'll just warn everybody, there's no trees without leaves. All right, I've been asked for trees without leaves before, and I'm gonna break your hearts right now.
Okay,
They all drop leaves. And then this final goal here, is really ties back to the SERP and the legislation AB 617. AB 617 is authorized by a volley of California public health codes. And so, I don't need a whole lot of research to know that a cooler neighborhood covered in trees is healthier for me if I'm struggling to breathe. And I also believe that trees intercept airborne particulate matter, and that particulate matter is likely reduced by vegetative barriers. The good news is Stockton will have really robust data sets that'll show us dispersion of air particulate matter. But my point here is that, we're not just planting $1 million worth of trees wherever they're easiest to go. We really want these to be, it could be as simple as, surround the neighborhoods with schools, surround the bike paths that people use, but also surround the emission sources that are most likely contributing to poor air quality. Those are my ideas. I'm happy to, and maybe this is a future agenda item, but I wanted to make sure that was a goal up front. Doug, I see your hand.
That's totally awesome. But also I want to add also my concern about when we do, plant trees, I definitely would like to see some kind of like people who would be responsible, but not like just, okay, we're going to plant a tree in your property, so you're going to have to take care of it, and yet they don't take care of it. I just like to make sure that if the resident are willing to have a tree, to follow the commitment of growing that out, because I know we're going to start small and then they're going to start growing and so I definitely, it'd be a waste of time if we just put trees in someone else's house and they're not going to take care of it. So
absolutely, maintenance is a disastrous challenge.
Yeah,
appreciate that. So does anybody else have any questions about sort of the template here? Oh, let me scroll down more if you're not looking at it yourself. There are some Zoom instructions that I think we're all tired of reading from so many Zoom meetings, but I'm happy to link those. But this blue link right here was something I was hoping people could click on and sign in. And part of this is to know who's here. So in case there are questions about conversations or meetings after the fact, we can go back and look and see who was at this meeting. It's also an opportunity for you as a subcommittee member to sort of pepper your experience in this meeting with comments or questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open this and show you what the heck I think I'm talking about. And you can tell me what we're missing. It's also not recommended to have 78 tabs open and 9 browsers and 13 apps. But so here's the big idea. We're in the wrong month, and I was calling this the healthy living barriers which was what they called it in West Oakland, but we're just going to call ourselves trees. And this will be October. And if there's anybody that feels like they're unable to enter their information into this, you know, that's something we can all help each other out with. And if you can drop it in the chat, we can plug it in there. So I'm going to sign in. And so what we'll do is create a new tab when we meet in November. And by create a new tab, what I mean is I'll create a copy of this, clear the signatures, and let folks sign in. You know, this is not a mandatory meeting. This is, you know, a voluntary meeting. And yes, thank you, Mary Elizabeth, for modeling what kind of questions we'll put in here. Anybody have any questions about the sign-in sheet? Sorry, I can't see if somebody's raising their hand right now. Okay, cool. Looks like people are signing in. It's not a mandatory sheet, so I don't think we need to spend a whole lot of time on this. But if you want it to be known that you were here and that you were offering your input, please sign in. If you want to be incognito, that's totally cool too. This next section was really just a resource area. And I'll just click and open this up. This is from Valley Air District, just to remind people that even though $2 million seems like a lot of money and we get to spend it, this is the only place it gets to be spent. So this is how these are our blinders, and they keep us to this footprint. And that's why map design is such an important process in AB 617. So if everybody's on the same page with that, that resource will live here in the document. Anybody have any questions about that? Cool. So we've gotten through like all of this, and we're like 4 minutes ahead of schedule, unless somebody wants to add something to goals, the agenda template, because what we can do is we can copy this agenda template and set new goals for each meeting. And we'll have a moment here at the end where we capture next steps and commitments that helps populate the next meeting. And then there's parking lot for all sorts of things that come up. You know, like good example would be maintenance concerns that Doug brought up. You know, that's going to be, the problem's no fun to think about, but there are solutions. Cool. Oh, I see something in the chat. Oh, thanks, Jonathan, for cluing folks in. Does anybody have any questions at all? Or are we all like pros at this?
I see a physical hand from Richard.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Richard. Sorry, I couldn't see you.
Oh. You know, the tree planting, I've been doing this ever since the 1960s of planting trees throughout many different areas in California. And Doug just brought up one of the many issues that really need to be resolved before you plant the tree. Planting the tree is the easy part. You know, there's a lot of prep work beforehand. There's even more work afterwards. And maintaining trees for the years and years and years and years can be very tedious. You know, I've been working, I was one of the founding members for Tree Lodi. And that is one of the major issues is once we get it planted, how do we make sure it's safe? And then also having people who are knowledgeable about trees, about plant materials is incredibly important too. You know, in Tree Lodi, we planted hundreds and hundreds of trees. And when you plant them in public areas, sometimes they don't survive, either because of willful neglect of, I hate to say this, but city employees who think it's easier to use a lawnmower to chop the tree down than it is to keep it growing. And so before one tree gets planted, you really have to map out your program and have the people in place to actually dedicated to do what you want to do. This is an issue that we've discovered in the past.
Thank you. You bet. I'm going to take a cue, and I see Jonathan's had his hand up, and then next would be Jessica.
I just want to make sure, I know, Matt, that there are a few new folks that came in. I think Matt Diaz came in from the city. Maybe you can just provide an overview of what we're doing right now, providing this is sort of the agenda that we're developing, and then maybe just the blue links, the sublinks to let them know.
Yeah, for sure. So I see Matt joined us, and so did Marlon, and so did Clifton. Good to see you, brother.
Hey, dude.
Yep, thanks for coming. So we're finalizing an agenda for how we collaborate. We're finalizing a sign-in sheet ritual so we know who is here. And we're introducing people to the goals of this subcommittee, which can be found up here. And if you joined late, it's not going to be in the chat because for some reason, Google doesn't want you to know something that everybody else knows, or Zoom doesn't. So I'll put this back in the chat. And if you guys have any questions about that, let me know, but you should be able to see and suggest edits to this template. And with that, Jessica, you had a response that you wanted to share, and maybe I can stop sharing.
Yeah, my response, I mean, was just to really to support what Richard said. And I think to support a little bit of what Matt said, and maybe it'll tee off the next part of the agenda, but obviously open to Matt if there are other questions before we tee off the project plan part. But we do have a benefit of, you know, AB 617 broadly is implemented in a lot of different communities, and there is a benefit to having a community be part of the second year, which is what Stockton is, because Fresno, for example, is another AB 617 community for those that aren't quite as plugged into AB 617. In the Valley, it was essentially selected a year ahead of time and is sort of a year ahead of Stockton, and they have a similar set of measures for urban greening and vegetative barriers. So we've kind of gone through this process a bit and heard completely everything you just mentioned, from making sure there's maintenance included, to making sure we understand the proper types of trees are planted, to working with people who know what they're doing when it comes to citing where the tree goes, to understanding what funding is required to do all the maintenance. And actually, to your point, Richard, the planting is the easy part. That's the fun part, right? But getting all of the planning ahead of that. So really what we've done, and what actually CARB requires us to do that Matt mentioned earlier, is we have to go to CARB with this project plan that outlines in general, it doesn't have to be every single step, but it has to outline in general how we as a CSC are going to roll out the urban greening and vegetative barriers process. And with that, we actually have a draft whenever you're ready. So it doesn't have to be right this second, but I just want to acknowledge we actually have a draft that outlines everything you've mentioned so far. So it outlines anyone we contract with to do vegetative barriers work has to, actually I'm reading some of this, has to understand the data, meaning understand maybe the science of where a vegetative barrier would be more effective than another place. It has to we have to know how many trees they'll want to plant. We have to know where they'll be located. So we have to make sure that anyone who receives this funding understands those things, as well as tells us, the district and the CSC, how long they're going to take care of them. You know, maybe we make that a part of the requirement of releasing an RFP. Long story short, all of that's enumerated and something that we'll share with you right now, and something that we can maybe as an action item have you guys take a look at with all of the great input from all these different parties. And that can be sort of how we check ourselves to make sure that we're hitting at all those items that Doug and Richard and Matt have already brought up. So I just kind of wanted to lay the groundwork for what that project plan is and all of the input that we'll need on that.
Any questions or responses to Jessica's take?
Maybe I can add to that just a little bit. That there's already some documents out there that are kind of a base for a lot of stuff that the state does. One of them actually is the Cal Fire Urban and Community Forest Grant Guidelines. It kind of lays out a lot of this stuff that we don't use all of it because they talk about sidewalks and concrete and this and that, but the actual how it's structured for GGRF funding and how you use it and how you calculate it, how it's kind of there, which is kind of good, which means we're not starting from zero, right? What the state wants us to do, which is great. So I just want to bring that up, is that we're not starting from zero, but we're also here to listen to make sure we understand the community's needs and wants, and make sure we address those and make sure it works for everybody here.
Yeah, that's really great input. And I think it's no mystery to anybody that's been participating in AB 617 for a long time that we've been talking about the overlapping goals of these two measures and the Transformative Climate Communities Project, which has a very similar footprint on the city of Stockton and has a sizable chunk of community planted trees as well as city planted trees. And so there's money for trees. There's money for that easy part. The TCC grant and CAL FIRE grants never fund the maintenance the way that they're supposed to. I planted CAL FIRE grants for like 7 years, and I curse their name. And I'm grateful for planting those trees. And so maybe I'll just throw out that maybe there's an opportunity that this funding from the Air District, which has greater flexibility, can really build on that opportunity in the TCC grant to help us take care of that maintenance and that survivability question that Richard brought up. So any other questions, or maybe it's time for us to take a look at the existing work plans that our friends in Fresno helped cook up, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, how do you want to do this? Want to share a screen? How would you guys?
Yeah, why don't you tell me if you have the authority to share a screen?
You know what? I don't know. Let me see here. I do, I believe. So you guys see that there? Is that on your everybody's screen? Good. Okay. So, I mean, I can go word for word on this thing, but I don't know if we have the time to do that. I don't think we want to do that. I want to go over just high level because we're going to end up giving this to the community to take a look at, right? So I want to go over some high level things in here, and how we kind of did it was for Fresno, which made it easier. We kind of already have a base which has been approved for Fresno, which makes it easier for us. But we kind of combined the urban greening and vegetative areas into one plan to make it simple. And then we take those in the end and split those out with different RPs for vegetative areas and urban greening, because there are two separate mechanisms, we'll say. But for the plan, we kind of combined them together. If that's confusing everybody, but it's made it easier. This is one giant tree plan for the communities, essentially. So I want to make that very clear what we did there. And it's pretty basic as far as like, here's, it's a community identified project. We want to work with the community for the measures that they want to do. And, we address those here as far as vegetative barriers and urban greening measures that are there. So it's just very basic to start with. Like, here's the communities, we're requested. Here's what we're doing to do that. So very, very basic to start. And we can get it. I want to get the nuts and bolts a little bit as far as like, some of the questions have been asked here to address some of those things. But also keep in mind too, for vegetative barriers, there's actually a document as well from US EPA that everybody follows. The vegetative area has very strict guidelines, height, width, types of trees, types of bushes that are there must be followed. And that's also addressed here as well. It's a very specific, and you have to study it. You have to actually kind of send it off to study it, see if it's even doable there. And I think one of the major companies that does that, I think it's called Sonoma Technologies, does that. They will study that location, see if vegetative area can be put there, and we'll actually work for the area. So just a couple of things to keep in mind as we work through these things where, I think it's been discussed already that planting the trees is the easy part. It's planning it out and getting it set up to go is going to be the work we're going to do here. So we talk about the community support. Obviously, the Stockton committee, wants this. So that's all this really is here. We're still, some of the yellow stuff we're still work in progress. So we want to make sure the exact numbers and the date, I think we're correct, but I just want to verify a couple things. So keep in mind, it's still work in progress. We're still kind of going through and updating some things for the community, make sure we're correct on some things here. And these are all links to the charter and the CERP for Stockton there. Some of the outreach mechanisms we'll do when we get this thing really going, we talk about here, how we're going to conduct outreach, how we're going to get the word out, how we're going to, and part of it is this subcommittee, right? So that we added here. The tree subcommittee obviously is a big one here. And also this is in yellow here, but this will come. I think I talked to Jessica today that there's a tracker that, we're developing a tracker to make it easier for her to see, but essentially this will be updated in the tracker so we can see what's kind of going on with the trees and urban and vegetative areas as we move forward here. Program requirements. So here are participant requirements to say, like who's eligible. So here's how we have it listed right now. A city could apply, county, special district, nonprofit, tribal government, public agency or entity. This is where we're going to hear from you. I mean, but our thought is that kind of like other agencies, you would contract with folks to do the work and we paid them to do the work, right, essentially. So any one of these type of agencies or nonprofits could apply. And I guess it's up to the committee as well. Would you want one giant $1 million grant? Or would you like 10, $100,000 grants? I don't know. I mean, that's to be decided. We need to talk about that. I don't know the answer to that. So that's something we can, as we get into the weeds, we can talk about that. But so this is who eligible. So think about that as a committee. Is there anybody else that we're missing on this list who would be eligible to apply to run this thing, right? So as we go through this stuff here. Very important, I talk about the owner of the land. Who be the owner of the land, have authority from the owner to plant it there, which is a big deal. The city, county, private resident, school district. Do they have, they have to be, get permission to do it, which takes some time. So we can go through all this. I don't want to go through one by one, but just some highlights that we're talking about here. Maintaining, they have to maintain it for 10 years, right? Some of that could be some of the fees, some of the admin funds that go along with it. We can discuss that as well, because we talk about trees dying. That's the worst thing that ever happened. Spend $1 million and lose half the trees. That would be the worst scenario I could ever think of there. Like I said, we can go through all these, but I don't want to go through one by one. Everybody's going to be able to see this. I think one of the ones we talk about criteria projects is kind of the species, non-invasive. Like this is very important. What type of tree you plant there? There's some tools that are used. It's called the iTree calculator that's used for this, which is from the CCI, kind of how they calculate stuff, which is kind of used here to basically get the co-benefits of what you're going to get from planting these trees here, which is very, very, very big. Because we have to report back to the state, what did you achieve with this? And that's kind of really the only tool, one of the tools we have to do that. Obviously, drought tolerance, and all these things that you need to take into consideration when planting a barrier or just trees out there to make sure it's good. Actually, this needs to come out right here. That's not correct. So actually, let me just do the word I'm thinking about here. There was a knot there.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, let me just, yeah, you were kind of working some things here. So the knot was there by mistake, sorry. But routine maintenance, and we can discuss that as a committee. What is routine maintenance? How long does it last? What does that entail? How do we pay them? Right, those are little, you're going to weeds a little bit. How do you actually pay them for routine maintenance? Is it just a annual cost? Is it, I don't know, so we need to talk about those things. And when you get into it, you start realizing, oh boy, there's a lot more than we thought, on this stuff. This right here, vegetative barrier, it needs to follow the US EPA's recommendations how to do it. There's a whole thing for that. There really is. Matt, go ahead. I want to keep talking all the time. Yes.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to ask if you ran into anything like a minimum survivorship percentage. Like CAL FIRE will let 10% of your trees die.
No, we have not. I mean, that's something we could put in here. We haven't really discussed that or talked about that in Fresno. We haven't really got to that point yet. So no, that's to be determined how we want to deal with that. And with the money being used to, if something dies, to replant it 3 years from now, the problem is the money might be gone, right? At that point, now you paid for all of it. So, like I said, things aren't always that simple sometimes. Yeah. Service easy when you get into it. Oh boy, how do we do that?
Yeah, I'll just point out to everybody that this project will probably have to meet a higher standard than routine government meets. In my experience, when communities do something, they have to do it better than the cities and the counties and the state that normally are supposed to be doing that, right? Like we're replacing a forest in South Stockton that technically the city, should have maintained had, capitalism worked for us. So we really do need to be super vigilant about strategies, and that right of access is going to be super important. And so it'll take a while to sort that out. I also wanted to call out the vegetative barrier US EPA recommendations. The guy that wrote that's Ken. He's in Region 9. He will join these committees when we're ready to start talking about vegetative barrier strategies. And Sonoma Tech is great. They do awesome data science for good people and bad people. If you pay them, they'll tell you the truth, or whatever you want them to tell. And then there's also other researchers that we've worked with, like HiFi Design Labs, who've done National Science Foundation research on vegetative barrier strategies. And so that particular measure is going to take, fortunately there's some standards and there's some rigor that we know how to meet. Yeah. The things that I'm really worried about are things that we don't know about, like, is CARB going to say the city has to replace one of its trees if it dies in year 11? You know, and I know they won't come look, but
I don't think so. I don't think the state is that deep into it as far as this program goes. They're kind of leaving it to the committee and the district here to make sure it functions correctly at this point in time. Is my understanding.
okay, thanks. I see you, Doug.
I'm mad. Can you talk a little bit slower? Because Mark Hannon is becoming to be like another Fast and the Furious, whatever, is going too fast with his hands, so I can't make out what he's saying. Can you?
No, I agree. I talk way too fast. My mom yells at me for doing that as well. So I will talk slower. My head's everything's going real fast in my head. So I will bring it down a notch here. I will do that.
I just want just letting you know, just being just slow it down a little bit because I can't make it out what he's saying anyway. So anyway, thank you. That's all.
Yeah, no, point noted. I will slow down. I need to do that myself anyway. So I will slow down a tick here and make sure we get it all there. Okay. This is a pretty basic.
Mary Elizabeth's hand, Aaron.
What's that? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question. So in this document here, I didn't see this document in the links.
We have not done that yet. This is still a draft. That
Oh, okay.
I mean, this is basically off the press. I mean, this is still have a bunch of highlights in this. We're going through it, so it's like we're giving it like the base of the rawest form you could think of. Because we want input. We don't want to just do it in a box. We want to make.
But we will post and send a draft when we have hopefully shortly after this meeting. So you guys can take, this isn't your only opportunity. You can take a look and read all the details that Aaron's going over.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so Aaron, when you reference some guidance document there, could you put a link to that document?
The links are actually in the document itself. Like the CAL FIRE ones here, I believe.
Yeah, you referenced an EPA document, a guidance document.
Yeah, I think it's further down. It's not further down. What I'll do is we'll get that sent out to the community as well.
Okay, but could you link it in here so that people that are reading this can easily refer to that? Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Elizabeth. And there's another resource that Aaron brought this up. You know, the tree that you plant today isn't the tree that's going to survive here tomorrow. And it's climate resilience for urban forestry. And we're fortunate that Stockton was part of a real landmark study called it was the 2100 Urban Forestry Study by the UC Cooperative Extension out of Berkeley. And they pulled 15 or 20 cities and they found a regional climactic corollary for them. And so the bad news is Stockton's going to be as hot as Barstow. The good news is we know to look at Barstow for trees that are thriving there, and that we really should skew our tree selection to the hardiest varieties possible. But that's also not like, you know, a prescription. You know, there are places where trees matter and they're worth water. We throw water on almonds to send them to Persia all day long. Maybe we can throw some water on trees in our communities to cool our schoolyards. And so we're going to have to set up how we prioritize which species we collect. I've been through a decade or so of the state telling us communities don't deserve water in community grants. And I think that there are times when we deserve a lawn and we deserve a tree that drinks a little bit of water. And at that time, irrigation and maintenance become the question. But we do have guidance on hardiness that is reliable.
Okay. This is the next section here talks kind of about how they would apply, right? And we have a kind of an application that they would fill out, which is kind of RFP. You do an RFP, but it's application. We want to make sure we get the right data from the entities that apply. And the RFP will be basically drafted and discussed with this committee, obviously, right? What needs to be in there. So we have not got that far yet, obviously, but that's one of the steps that are in here with it. I'm assuming that the community want an RFP to select the right person for this, not just hand it out, I'm assuming. And so that's the next section here is basically an RFP. And we can, and the committee will come up with the scoring criteria. How do we do it? You know, what do we see? You know, how it takes. Like I said, there's some stuff out there. Like I said, the CAL FIRE one's something. You can take bits from little different things here to rank it, not just take all one. Like think Matt said something, there's some good things and there's some things you don't like. So we take some good things and we kind of figure this thing out, right? To make it work, but also make it fair to everybody who wants to apply and do this work, because we need them to do the people who know what they're doing to do the work for us here. So that's what this goes over. They'll have an application, which basically is kind of RFP application, essentially what this goes into. We can get into that as far as when we issue it, dates and this and that. That's to be determined still. And also this talks about the CSC with a consensus, like, hey, who got selected? It's kind of a group effort there where the CSC does have input of what entity was selected to do the work for either urban green vegetative barriers. And like I mentioned, Matt, maybe before, is how many do you do? How many entities? And I don't know. I mean, the tough thing about this thing too, I'll just say from my perspective, the more irons in the fire makes it tougher to manage. So, as a group, you say, well, we're looking for one, we're looking for two, maybe max. That's a lot. So we got to think about that.
Yeah, anybody who's been
separate people doing projects, I don't think you want that.
Yeah, anybody who's been through this process with us the last 18 months would agree. There is a maximum number of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So do you have any insights for us on, like, the assessing vegetative barriers is something a couple of these firms can do for a relatively small dollar amount compared to the large. And then vegetative barriers are a specific design and implementation strategy. I could see that being separate. Whereas the urban greening, that's actually a really generous measure that doesn't have a lot of restrictions to it. And, we do have an existing urban greening project with the city. And there's a short list of community-based organizations implementing that project with the city. When you did this in Fresno, were you able to transfer any significant sum of money to the city to underwrite an existing forestry strategy in their study area?
Well, to be honest with you, we haven't got that far yet. We're still working on the RFP to go out at this point in time. That's the stage we're at right now with Fresno.
Okay.
So I was actually working on that today, the two different RFPs, and they are different for, the barrier and urban greening. But, one big thing is, how much trees can they plant versus how much overhead do they want to do the maintenance, right? I mean, you want trees, but you want maintenance too. So you have this balance, just because the guys do 1,000 trees, not take care of them doesn't serve your purpose sometimes, right? As we all know. So it's to be determined as a group here. Like I said, I'm not going to say I know it all and this next. I'm not a tree expert by any means. I'm just trying to make sure we can get this done correctly and have a successful project. That's kind of my goal of the whole thing here, and get the right people in the right positions to do the work correctly, essentially. And then also, just to bring up, like you mentioned, the ongoing efforts in Stockton already, is that's one of the scoring criteria we have for Fresno, is that how will they leverage existing TCC grants that are currently occurring in the Fresno community? Like, how would you take that and expand upon it, right? Not just have separate ones, but would you take separate ones and expand upon it? Like things like that, like to make sure the applicant would look at things as a whole, not just in a silo, we would say.
Okay. I think that's a pretty great overview. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're almost done here. I think we got one more. This is basically, we're talking funding amounts, what we can pay them for, essentially, right? What's eligible. Obviously their administrative services, the cost of the trees, obviously. So yeah, we can go through all this, but this is kind of in there right now as what's eligible, essentially.
Yeah, that's super helpful bullets right there.
Yeah, and that's there. And like I said, we can, start adding to those, take those away and play with those as we go. Have sub bullets in there. Where and questions that might come up, I don't know. How they report back to us, we can talk about that, how they report back. I mean, right now we're going to request quarterly reports for the Fresno one, which be here, hey, how are you doing? Where are we at? What are we doing? What's been planted? You report back to the committees, right? So that's very important.
And do you have cities reporting back to you? I mean, is that, do you see that happening? That there's a lead agent from the city that shows up at the Fresno meetings? And
well, actually, I envision probably for Fresno, probably Treat Fresno, who actually does the work. I'll be honest with you. So they will be the ones who probably report back to us. And they'll let us know their their work with the city, county, school districts, you know, because they have ongoing already in the community, ongoing relationships with those folks already.
Okay.
So that's how I envision that working.
Okay. Well, if you have anything else, Aaron, let's get to it. I want to give people.
Yeah. I want to get out of here real quick as well. I think Mary had a question. Mary, can I ask?
Yeah, just real quick, can you speak to that initial study?
Well, that's what I don't, you mean?
Yeah, is that something that we're going to be doing?
No, that's there as a placeholder. I don't know.
That's like
That's
this.
kind of a placeholder there to see if it's required now for a vegetative area. Yes, you have to do kind of a study. For urban greening, I don't think so. So that's where you kind of separate the two out, I believe. So
Yeah, to give you an idea, Mary Elizabeth, we have a air quality model for the region, and you can look at air over Stockton for the last several, months, if not year. And we can see that we probably may not need to plant trees along Pershing where there's a huge forest, but it's still in the study area. But there's a much greater burden at certain clusters of transportation facilities. So really assessing the study area to prioritize where a barrier should go. And then also evaluating who it benefits. Is it blocking overburdened communities or sensitive receptor sites, that kind of a study to triangulate those priorities. Yes, Jessica.
And I think to add to that, because Mary Elizabeth said, is that something we're going to be doing? I think and maybe this is clear, but I just want to make it clear for everyone. What Aaron's outlining here is the requirements we as a CSC or subcommittee can put in an RFP for the people who get this money to do. And we can say, you can only get this money if you A, do a study that maybe monitors an area for a period of time to make sure that a vegetative barrier works. B, plants the right kind of trees per this list we gave you. C, provides maintenance. So like we can put all of this in that RFP that Aaron's talking about and require that study of the people. So we don't have to, we as a CSC are interviewing people, selecting sort of the criteria, maybe their project plans. But it's really the experts that are, and maybe even the technical folks that are on this line now that are really providing that input.
Okay, and then Matt, just the last little bit, kind of these are the tools we would use to calculate the benefits, right? The California Natural Resources Agency, tree planting, like there's some stuff already out there. We're not gonna reinvent the wheel on this. You put your trees in, what type of trees, and it spits out you some stuff that's been calculated already, essentially. So that's all this really is at the bottom that we would want the applicants to use to calculate their projects when they submit those to the committee here. So that's about it as far as that goes. And I will send it to Jessica and I'll have her get it out to the right people here, along with the EPA vegetative barrier document as well, so I can get that the right places there. So I will stop sharing now. I know I talked probably too long there, but I think it was a good discussion. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page, and this is open discussion. We want to make sure that when we do this, that it works correctly, but also make people very aware that these are not easy to do. And we want to make sure we do it right. But yeah, they're not, as I'm finding out, as I get into this, I'm more of an off-road construction tractor guy. Trees are new to me. I'm getting into this now, and this is hard. And we're digging in deep, or we're going to figure it out. So yeah. I'll leave it at that.
Well, thank you. That was a huge insight, and I'm just glad we're not Fresno and we're not starting from scratch.
Yeah,
real quick, I want to bring folks back to the goals for this meeting to make sure we met those goals, because there's a few things I didn't call out and do right. And then I want to make sure we have the right stuff on our next meeting. And I want to make sure we have an idea when we want to meet. And we may be out of time and may need to doodle poll everybody here who signed in to the sign-in document. So make sure you're signed in. That'll be how we follow up. I will send out the notes from this meeting, and you'll all have the ability to edit this and add your comments. But before we do that, I'm going to share this screen and ask you all to take a look. Hopefully you can see the agenda. We did not identify CSC co-leadership roles for the trees committee. Is there anybody? I was hoping Ned loves trees and he's not here anymore. I was gonna try to strong arm him into it. I'm actually volunteering to do the trees subcommittee because I love trees and I want to stay out of other CSC activities. So I'm offering to help continue to facilitate, but I think we need at least one or two more people to help make sure that this is a transparent and inclusive process. And we do need at least 2 people from the CSC, whereas everyone else is welcome to carry as much of this load as they want. But I really do want to have 2 co-leads coming back from this committee saying, yes, the tree subcommittee recommends this. Matt's not making shit up. For lack of a better choice of words. So does anybody else want to help, who is also a voting member of the CSC, wear the hat of co-lead? Not everybody at once. Oh, I can't see everybody. Sorry. And then, so we can leave that open-ended, and maybe Ned will be able to do it when he comes back from another meeting. But is there anybody that would object to me doing this? And I can take that. But I'm going to put my name in here for right now, and you can send me a corrective email later if you don't think that's a good idea. But I'll leave a question mark in here. Everybody cool with the agenda? Seems to make sense. Great. Speak now or forever hold your peace. I'm recommending that we review the measures in our next meeting. For implementing partners, obviously the city showed up. So I'm super grateful to Sue from Public Works for being here. And I think Mike was also from the city, and Grant. I see a lot of opportunity to support the TCC project. As you guys know, there's so many gaps. So I hope we can count on you to continue to come here. But as a co-lead, I can be your point of contact for this subcommittee. And so obviously the city is here. And I think, I'm really excited to see Marlon here from Caltrans. I'm still trying to work with them over there to make sure the transportation facilities are addressed. But we'll create a partners list in our next meeting. That's a recommendation I'm going to ask for, and to make sure we have everybody in here, like obviously the Council of Governments. This community ambassador strategy was really just about you all thinking about how you can creatively inform this, and you don't have to be a CSC member to invite somebody to the next meeting. So please do that if you think they want to help plant trees and want to help carry the load. And so this next one is about scheduling a regular meeting. This is the 3rd Thursday of the month. If we were to do the next 3rd Thursday of the month, it would happen before Thanksgiving. That would be, or it's Tuesday. Thank you. You guys were all really nice about not calling me out on that. Oh yeah, Tuesday would be the 23rd. So that would be 2 days before Thanksgiving. I don't know how y'all feel about that. A lot of people lose that whole week. But I think we should meet in November to keep traction on this topic. Anybody nodding to that?
Actually, Matt, the 3rd Tuesday is the 16th.
Oh, good. Yeah, we start on the 2nd. Even better, Margot. Thank you. Anybody object to trying to schedule this on the 16th of November? Hot dog. I'm going to put it in the agenda notes and forward this out to everybody, and you can correct it again. So we're going to go with 3rd Thursday for now. That might not work in December. Oh, fat fingers. 16. Hey, look at Google knows how to do it. Oh, no, it doesn't.
I mean, Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Brain damage.
Jeez, you're struggling.
Yeah, totally. Hey, you get old, Jonathan. It happens. Cool. And then I think another thing for the next meeting is sort of talking about setting up some milestones, but clearly we're over the clock. So I want to respect that for everybody. And so let's just do this last section real quick. Topics for next meeting. I'd like to review the measures, revisit the schedule. Is there anything else that someone would like me to type in now? Or you can always type them into the attendance sheet if you have a recommendation then.
They say review any feedback from the project plan. We'll send that out.
Matt, I have a question.
Yes.
I hope I went to the link and put my name, but I don't know how to save it. Do they automatically save my name and email on the link?
It automatically saves. Google never gives back any information, so you're in there.
Oh, cool. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think we're good.
I need to make sure that you understand it saves once you have clicked out of the cell. if you're still actively editing and you close it down, Google didn't know you were finished, and so it doesn't save. Just
Perfect, thank you.
Very good point. So if your name, if you got your email in here, you're gonna get follow-up notes from this and an invite and a draft of the plan. Is that right, Jessica? Great.
That is correct.
Anything else that somebody feels like I'm missing? And for the good of the order.
Would it help? I don't know if the city, would it help to provide sort of a review of what the city has done so far with the TTC one to see if there's any gaps to fill in there, or would that take another meeting?
I think that's important. These are only an hour.
Yeah.
Why don't we put it on there? And if we can get to it, hopefully by then we'll have resolved who TCC is going forward in the south side.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say I'm happy to provide a like a written summary as well to save time, if that'd be helpful.
Mucho gusto. Cool. Oh, lots in the chat. Oh, good stuff. Great. For the good of the order, let's all go home. Hallelujah. Look at us. All right. Talk soon, everybody. Be well.
Thanks, everyone. Talk soon.
Good job, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.